A billionaire, a man with all the luxuries money can buy, sits in despair because of a problem that no amount of wealth seems able to fix. His cry for help isn't one of financial ruin, but of emptiness, of helplessness in the face of something that requires more than power or money. In that moment, his vulnerability is laid bare, and surprisingly, the one who responds to him is not another elite figure, not an advisor, not a fellow tycoon, but a homeless man. A man who owns nothing but his experience, resilience, and perspective on life. When the homeless man hears the cry and says, "I can fix it," it changes the entire dynamic. Suddenly, the one who is often overlooked, ignored, or dismissed becomes the teacher, and the one admired, envied, and followed becomes the student. This story shows us something that society rarely acknowledges. Wisdom does not always come from wealth or status, and strength does not always come from position. Often, those who have endured the hardest lives, those who have been stripped of material comfort, are the ones who carry truths that money can't buy. The billionaire, with all his riches, was lost in a battle of the soul, a struggle with purpose, meaning, or direction. He had learned how to accumulate wealth, but not how to carry peace, how to build empires, but not how to mend his heart. The homeless man, on the other hand, had spent years navigating pain, hunger, loneliness, and rejection, and through those battles, he had gained an understanding of endurance, gratitude, and inner strength. What he offered was not material, it was perspective. The kind that awakens something inside a person who thought they had everything but realizes they were still starving on the inside. The moment is humbling because it flips the script. A billionaire, used to being in control, used to hiring the best, paying for the most, and demanding results, finds himself being saved not by wealth, but by the compassion and insight of someone who has nothing to give but his words and heart. The homeless man teaches him something money cannot buy: peace, resilience, the ability to find light in the darkest places. It's a reminder that real wealth is not measured in numbers on a bank statement, but in the strength of one's spirit, the kindness in one's heart, and the wisdom carried through trials. This also forces us to reflect on how we view others. Too often, society walks past the homeless without a glance, assuming they have nothing to offer, forgetting that every human being carries a story, a lesson, an experience that has shaped them. What the billionaire learned is that a man who has lived with nothing can often see everything more clearly. Stripped of distractions, stripped of luxuries, he learns the raw truths of survival, faith, and appreciation. And those lessons become more valuable than gold to someone who has lived their life chasing material success. The beauty of this story lies in its irony. A man who once thought his money made him untouchable discovered that it left him vulnerable in areas money couldn't reach. The homeless man, seen as powerless by society, held the very power the billionaire lacked: the power to endure, to adapt, and to find meaning. When he said, "I can fix it," he wasn't speaking of fixing wealth, business, or power, but fixing the human heart that had been lost in the noise of success. The billionaire learned that sometimes the greatest teachers are the ones the world tries hardest to silence, and the greatest lessons are taught in moments of humility, not in boardrooms or on balance sheets. This speech reminds us that no matter who we are, no matter how much we have, we all need someone. We all need perspective, compassion, and truth. And sometimes, the answer to our deepest struggles will not come from where we expect, but from the very place society tells us not to look. The billionaire found his help not in his wealth, but in the wisdom of a man who had nothing, proving that real riches are not about what you own, but about what you know, what you've lived, and what you can share with others when they are at their breaking point. True wisdom can come from unexpected places, and often, the most profound lessons are not found in classrooms, boardrooms, or wealthy circles, but in the voices of those society tends to overlook. A homeless man, someone the world may pass by without a second glance, can hold truths that even a billionaire cannot buy. This is the irony of life experience. Struggle and suffering often produce a kind of wisdom that wealth and privilege cannot provide. The billionaire in this story had everything: money, success, and status. But when faced with a problem deeper than financial or business matters, he found himself lost. His cry for help revealed the emptiness that power and riches could not fill. And in that very moment, the answer came from a man who had none of those things, but who had lived through the kind of hardship that forces a person to see life differently. When the homeless man said, "I can fix it," he was not just offering help, he was offering perspective. He had endured cold nights without shelter, hunger that gnawed at him, and rejection from a society that judged him by his appearance and status. Through those trials, he had developed strength, resilience, and clarity. That kind of wisdom is born only in the fire of adversity. While the billionaire learned how to multiply money, the homeless man learned how to multiply faith, patience, and gratitude. These are not skills taught in business schools or elite gatherings. They are carved into the soul through hardship. It is easy to assume that wisdom belongs to those who are educated, powerful, or wealthy, but history and life continually show us otherwise. A person who has lost everything knows the value of even the smallest blessing. A person who has faced rejection again and again understands empathy in ways a billionaire, surrounded by admiration, never could. This is why unexpected voices often carry the deepest truths. The homeless man had no fortune to share, but his life experiences gave him an understanding of endurance and peace that the billionaire desperately needed. The lesson here is that we must never underestimate anyone. Society teaches us to measure people by their possessions, their titles, their homes, or their appearance, but none of these things guarantee wisdom. In fact, sometimes abundance blinds people from truths that scarcity reveals. The billionaire had been insulated by wealth, distracted by success, and surrounded by people who told him what he wanted to hear. The homeless man had nothing to shield him from reality. He had to face life raw and unfiltered. And because of that, he saw life more clearly. He knew how to survive when there was nothing left, how to find meaning in pain, and how to keep moving forward despite the weight of despair. True wisdom often comes from unexpected places because pain has a way of teaching what comfort cannot. The billionaire, in all his accomplishments, still lacked peace. The homeless man, with none of those accomplishments, had discovered peace within. The irony is that the billionaire's wealth gave him power, but no answers, while the homeless man's struggles gave him answers without power. And in that moment of humility, when the billionaire chose to listen, the dynamic shifted. The one seen as low became the teacher, and the one admired as great became the student. This story is a reminder that wisdom does not wear a uniform or carry a title. It can live in the most unexpected voices, often in those we are quickest to dismiss. Everyone has a story, and every story carries a lesson. If we learn to listen with humility, we may discover that the answers we seek are not always found in the places society tells us to look. Sometimes the richest truths are spoken by the poorest lips, and sometimes the most powerful guidance comes from those who appear powerless. That is why true wisdom can come from unexpected places, and why we must be willing to open our ears and hearts to voices that the world ignores. Money cannot solve every problem, and this truth is often realized too late by those who spend their lives chasing wealth. as if it is the ultimate answer to happiness. The billionaire in this story had riches beyond measure, yet when he cried out for help, it was not because of a lack of money, but because money could not fix the emptiness he felt inside. Wealth can build skyscrapers, purchase mansions, and fill bank accounts, but it cannot buy peace of mind, genuine love, true friendship, or purpose. It cannot silence the loneliness that creeps in when the applause fades or heal the pain of regret when choices weigh heavy on the heart. This is why so many people who seem to have everything on the outside still suffer on the inside. The billionaire's cry revealed a struggle deeper than financial hardship. His problem was not numbers or investments. It was something intangible. It may have been loneliness, the pressure of carrying an image, or the emptiness that comes when material success no longer feels fulfilling. These are problems money has no power over. Money can rent company but not guarantee companionship. It can buy entertainment but not true joy. It can offer temporary distraction but not lasting peace. For someone who has spent their entire life believing that wealth is the answer, this realization comes as a shock. The cry for help is not just about the problem. It is about discovering that money has limits. The homeless man's role in this story highlights that truth perfectly. He had none of the billionaire's resources. Yet he carried something more valuable: perspective. He had endured suffering that taught him how to survive without comfort, how to appreciate the smallest blessings, and how to find strength within himself. These are lessons money cannot purchase. The billionaire, with all his wealth, could not buy the resilience that the homeless man carried. This contrast shows the limits of money's power. It can create opportunities, but it cannot build character. It can secure influence, but it cannot create wisdom. It can open doors, but it cannot heal a broken soul. This story forces us to ask ourselves what problems we expect money to fix in our own lives. Many people believe that if they had more wealth, they would finally be at peace, finally feel happy, or finally find freedom. But countless examples prove otherwise. Celebrities, tycoons, and millionaires often reveal their struggles with depression, isolation, and addiction despite having all the money in the world. Money may solve surface-level needs, but it cannot reach into the deepest parts of who we are. True healing, meaning, and fulfillment must come from something greater: faith, purpose, connection, or inner strength. The billionaire's breakdown is a reflection of what happens when people spend their lives chasing the wrong prize. He had mastered the art of building an empire, but had not learned how to build his inner life. That is why, in the moment of his greatest need, money could not save him. It could not buy the wisdom or comfort that came freely from the homeless man's heart. The man who had nothing became the answer to the man who had everything, proving once again that the human soul needs more than wealth to thrive. The lesson here is timeless. Money is a tool, not a savior. It can make life easier, but cannot make life meaningful. It can provide comfort, but cannot guarantee peace. It can give you status, but not respect that comes from the heart. The billionaire's cry for help teaches us that, no matter how much we acquire, there will always be problems that money cannot touch. The solution to those problems lies not in the size of our bank account, but in the depth of our character, the strength of our spirit, and the wisdom we are willing to receive, even if it comes from the most unexpected source. Humility opens the door to learning, and this truth is at the heart of the billionaire's encounter with the homeless man. For someone who has lived a life surrounded by power, respect, and admiration, it is not easy to admit weakness, let alone accept help from someone society views as powerless. The billionaire was used to being the one in control, the one people turned to for solutions, and the one whose wealth made him untouchable. Yet in his moment of need, he discovered that none of those things mattered, and the only way he could receive the wisdom he lacked was by humbling himself enough to listen. That moment of humility transformed him, from being the teacher to becoming the student, and it is what allowed the lesson to change him so deeply. Too often, pride blinds us to the truth. Pride tells us we already know enough, that we don't need guidance, or that listening to someone beneath us is unnecessary. This attitude shuts the door on growth. The billionaire could have easily dismissed the homeless man, brushed off his words, or refused to believe that someone with nothing could offer him something of value. But humility forced him to pause, to recognize that despite appearances, the man standing before him carried wisdom that could heal what money could not. Without humility, the billionaire would have stayed trapped in his despair, continuing to cry out for answers, while ignoring the voice that could provide them. Humility is powerful because it creates space for learning. It reminds us that no matter who we are or what we have accomplished, there will always be lessons we cannot teach ourselves. It allows us to see beyond social status, titles, and appearances, and it pushes us to value substance over image. The billionaire's humility stripped away his pride, even for a moment, and in that opening, he received a truth that could change his life. It is often in the moments when we lower ourselves that we find the answers we've been searching for. This lesson is not only for the billionaire, it is for all of us. How often do we dismiss people because of their status, their background, or their appearance? How often do we assume that wisdom only comes from those who are educated, successful, or wealthy? Yet some of the deepest insights often come from those who have suffered, those who have been ignored, or those who have lived in silence. Humility is what allows us to listen without judgment, to see beyond the surface, and to receive lessons that pride would have kept hidden from us. The irony is that the homeless man, who had nothing to boast about in the eyes of the world, was the one who held the key to the billionaire's peace. If the billionaire had allowed pride to control him, he would have dismissed the man as irrelevant. Instead, his willingness to bow his ego, even for a brief moment, opened the way for him to be changed. Humility turned an unlikely encounter into a life-altering exchange. It made him teachable again, something many powerful people forget how to be. What this shows us is that humility is not weakness. It is strength. It takes courage to admit you don't have all the answers. It takes strength to accept help from someone you would never expect to learn from. And it takes wisdom to recognize that truth is not limited to certain voices. By humbling himself, the billionaire gained more than money ever gave him. He gained perspective, healing, and a reminder that every person has something valuable to teach if we are willing to listen. This is why humility is essential, because it not only opens the door to learning, but also ensures that we never close ourselves off from the very lessons that can transform us. Every person has value and experience, no matter what their status, background, or situation looks like on the surface. Society is quick to label people by what they have, what they wear, or where they live. But these labels never tell the full story of a human being. The homeless man in the story is a clear reminder of this truth. To most people, he would have been invisible, just another figure on the street, someone to avoid or ignore. But behind his worn clothes and tired eyes lived years of experience, survival, and lessons that gave him wisdom far beyond what money could buy. His value wasn't in his possessions, because he had none. His value was in his resilience, his perspective, and his understanding of life in its rawest form. The billionaire, on the other hand, had all the things the world celebrates: wealth, power, and status. People looked at him and saw success. Yet his cry for help revealed that beneath the surface, he was broken in ways that money couldn't fix. The contrast between the two men shows us that value is not determined by appearance. A man who had nothing to his name ended up teaching the man who had everything. That moment proves that every person, no matter how society views them, has something worth sharing. Experience is one of the greatest teachers in life, and it doesn't discriminate between rich or poor. In fact, those who go through the harshest realities often gain the deepest insights. The homeless man had endured struggles the billionaire could never imagine. Nights without food, days of rejection, the weight of invisibility. These experiences taught him lessons of gratitude, endurance, and humility. They gave him a perspective on life that the billionaire, sheltered by wealth, never had the chance to develop. His pain had turned into wisdom, and his struggles had become his strength. That wisdom became his gift, and when the billionaire cried out, it was that gift he shared. This challenges the way society measures worth. Too often, people are judged by what they can contribute in material terms. Those without money, influence, or status are pushed aside, as if they are of no importance. Yet this story reminds us that everyone has value, because everyone has a story. Each life carries lessons born of unique experiences. Even the quietest voice can hold the words that change someone's life. The billionaire only discovered this when he chose to listen to someone the world told him not to. In doing so, he realized that value is not about possessions, but about perspective, and experience is a treasure no amount of money can replace. There is also a deeper lesson here about human dignity. Every person, no matter their situation, deserves respect. The homeless man's words became a turning point because they carried the weight of truth, but that truth might never have been heard if the billionaire had dismissed him. Too often, society silences people who are already suffering, refusing to see their worth. This story flips that idea on its head. It reminds us that value is not found in luxury, but in humanity, not in wealth, but in wisdom, and not in status, but in the lived experience of overcoming life's hardest battles. The billionaire's transformation came from recognizing the value in someone the world had rejected. It shows us that sometimes the people we least expect to teach us end up being the ones who hold the key to the answers we seek. Every person you pass by has faced battles you know nothing about, and in those battles, they may have discovered truths that could change your life. That is why every person has value and experience, and why we must never underestimate the lessons hidden in the lives of those society often ignores. Real wealth is inner strength and peace, and this truth is often realized only when people who seem to have everything discover that they are still unfulfilled. The billionaire in this story represents what society often chases: riches, luxury, power, and status. To the outside world, he had reached the top. Yet his cry for help revealed an emptiness that money could not fill. He could buy the most expensive homes, fly in private jets, and command the attention of thousands, but inside he lacked the very thing that gives life meaning: peace of mind and strength of spirit. This moment shows us that wealth without peace is just noise, and success without inner strength is fragile. The homeless man, on the other hand, was the opposite image. He had no possessions, no comfort, and no security. Yet what he carried inside was something far more valuable: resilience, wisdom, and an ability to endure. His life had been shaped by hardship, but in those hardships, he had learned to find peace with little, to stay strong when life stripped him of everything, and to keep going when the world ignored him. That is a kind of wealth that cannot be counted in money or measured by status. It is the wealth of the soul, the wealth that allows someone to face storms and still rise the next day. Real wealth is not about what we own, but about what we can carry within ourselves. The billionaire's emptiness showed that possessions can never replace peace. A full bank account cannot quiet an anxious mind, nor can luxury buy contentment. Inner peace comes from acceptance, gratitude, and perspective. The homeless man's survival had forced him to develop those qualities. He had to learn to be grateful for a meal, to find strength in faith, to build endurance in suffering. These qualities created an inner richness that the billionaire's external success could not match. This story teaches us to rethink what it means to be wealthy. If you have strength to endure when life gets hard, you are wealthy. If you can find peace even when your circumstances are uncertain, you are wealthy. If you can hold on to gratitude in the middle of struggle, you are wealthy. These treasures are greater than gold because they sustain you when everything else fades. Money can be lost, businesses can collapse, status can disappear. But inner strength and peace remain with you, no matter where life takes you. That is why they are the real foundation of a meaningful life. The irony is that the billionaire, admired by the world, looked to a man with nothing for what he lacked. And it was in that moment that the truth became clear. External wealth can decorate life, but internal wealth sustains it. Many people chase success, believing it will give them freedom, but real freedom comes from being at peace within yourself. A person with little but with peace is freer than a person with millions who cannot rest. A person with inner strength is richer than someone who depends on money to feel powerful. The homeless man taught the billionaire that life's greatest riches are often invisible. They cannot be held in your hand, but they can be felt in your spirit. Peace allows you to face storms calmly. Strength allows you to rise from failures. Wisdom allows you to see life clearly, without illusions. These are the treasures that give life meaning, and they are available to anyone, no matter their status. The billionaire's journey shows us that the pursuit of wealth without the pursuit of peace leaves us empty. The homeless man's words remind us that true riches are found in the strength we build within and the peace we choose to protect. That is real wealth, and it is worth more than anything money can buy.